right. Well, I want to thank you for inviting me here today. My name is Scott Shine, and I'm running for School Board District 2 here in Duval County. One of the reasons I'm running for school board is I think it's vitally important to our community. In fact, I think it's one of the most important elected positions that we have. I am a fiscal conservative. I've served on the Jacksonville Ethics Commission. I'm also in my second term on the Jacksonville Waterways Commission, my 5th year. There I have one of the most fiscally conservative voting records. I've also been very active in terms of proposing new initiatives. Every new initiative that I proposed on that body has been enacted into law or acted on as a public policy initiative. My background actually comes from corporate America. I came to Jacksonville 27 years ago to work for Blue Cross and Blue Shield. I also worked for Barnett Bank, Bank of America. I was the planning director for the Nemours Children's Clinic. My advocacy with youth includes a stint on the board of directors for the Youth Crisis Center. I'm also a volunteer educator for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. In general, I have a significant number of endorsements for this position. In fact, I'm endorsed by every sitting school board representative who has held this position for the beaches for the last 20 years. That includes Fred Fell Lee, Nancy Bronner, and Susan Wilkinson. I'm endorsed by 6 current former city councilmen, including 4 council presidents, and the chair of the State Board of Education. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer your questions.
There are numerous records and reports of American history rewritten in Florida textbooks. Have you reviewed these examples, and what will you do to ensure the accuracy of historical text?
I understand that from time to time there are errors, and sometimes these errors are driven by political concerns. I don't know of the specifics in our system today, but I would be deeply troubled to find that those things would still exist in our system. If there are inaccuracies in our textbooks, I'll do everything possible to see that those are corrected and that the accurate depiction of history is taught in our school systems.
Duval County continues to perform poorly on the FCAT. What would you want to change to improve student performance?
Oh, one of the things that's changing right now is that we are moving away from the FCAT into the Florida standards. We're still going to have issues with the design of that particular test. If you look at Duval County as a system, we are unique. In fact, compared to many of the other counties in the 5-county area, we have a much higher percentage of low socioeconomic students participating in our school system. If you want to find the single most relevant determinant of why student test scores are low, it's correlated with lower socioeconomic background as a point of origin. So we're going to see that. If you look at Duval County schools in terms of different parts of our school system, you're going to actually find some of the best schools in the country and the best schools in the state. In fact, I just looked last night at some of the data. We have top performing schools in the South Side, including Mandarin, Fletcher, Sandalwood. Our schools, many of our schools in these suburban areas are as good as the schools in neighboring counties. But since we have a higher percentage of children coming out of the inner city and the low socioeconomic areas, that's one of the things that influences our schools. I think we have to step back and start looking at the scores more in terms of the regions of the city, because it hurts us economically when we only say Duval is a poor performer. The reality is many of the schools, many of the students are performing very, very well.
There are numerous reports that reading assignments are not age appropriate and are not representative of true context learning. Have you reviewed these examples, and what will you do to ensure that the text is appropriate?
Well, again, I've heard stories of that. I haven't seen them personally, and I'm very open to any group that brings these issues to the forefront. One of the things that's important to look at with the Duval County school system is that we are like a city manager form of government. We actually hire the superintendent. In many other school systems, they actually have an elected superintendent. So it's up to our board to charge our superintendent with investigating these issues and managing within the system. This is the 22nd largest school system in the United States. We have over 10,000 employees. We have 125,000 students. So the individual school board members have to actually work through the superintendent and the leadership to find these things and root out these problems and find resolution. It's a big system. The school board needs to stay focused on strategic policy decisions.
Do you support school choice and the use of vouchers, and why?
Yes, I do support school choice. I think schools are changing. We used to have kind of a big box mentality with schools, one size fits all. That's very different today because the job market is changing. Technology, engineering, mathematics, these things are changing the type of jobs that children are going to be going into in their adult life. So specialization of school is important. That's one of the things the charter school system is doing. In addition, charter schools are also picking up a lot of the at-risk students. Lone Star is an example, as well as the KIPP school. So they're filling a need that some of the public schools and the government is actually not filling. Vouchers are controversial, but if you actually look at the economics behind the voucher, it costs about $10,000 a year to educate a child in our system. If you look at how much we put into vouchers, typically to send a child to a private school, it's interesting, it's actually a economic gain. We don't want to incentivize all of our students to leave the system, but we have problems to solve. We have choice within the system today. If you look back at about 1970, you're going to see almost the same number of students in the school system back then that we had today. And the reason is because so many parents are moving to St. Johns County or Baker County. They're homeschooling their children, or they're sending them to private school. So the concept of choice is already in the system, and the biggest aspect of choice is people vote with their feet. They simply move to another county or homeschool as opposed to sending their kids to public school. Choice is a competitive alternative. We've got to realize that's in the landscape and deal with it effectively and make our public school system a desirable choice, and many of them are.
On the issue of Common Core, please explain where you stand on the national standards and national assessments.
Common Core is a very interesting subject. About 80% of our population does not support Common Core or feel comfortable with it. But what's interesting is that if you look at the number of people in Duval County that support the notion of uniform testing from state to state, about 75 to 80% support that, which is the overarching strategy behind Common Core. The interesting thing about Common Core is that train has pretty much left the station. We have 45 states who are executing on Common Core. The State Board of Education has voted that into law, and we have many members of the conservative leadership, including Jeb Bush, who are supporting Common Core. So one of the things that I'm going to say to you about Common Core is whether or not we like it, this is a reality that we're going to have to deal with in the local school system. If someone comes in here and tells you that they are going to stop it, they also have to tell you that, well, that would result in an economic reduction from the state and federal government if we don't do this. And by law, we have to do some other testing mechanism. There's 6 other school board members that probably would feel differently and continue to support Common Core. So the charge that we have today is effectively executing on what we're calling the Florida standards, which are actually somewhat different than Common Core, in some ways that are more advanced. Execute effectively on that, and then deal with the challenges that are going to come up. This is a brand new system. It was tested outside of Florida. It was actually tested in Utah. We're losing our baseline for educator performance and student performance, so it's going to be a couple of years before we can reestablish a baseline. So it's a very complicated issue. It's something we're going to have to deal with, and the opportunity to say no to this is not realistic. The real challenge is we are going to have to deal with this whether we like it or not.
Recent legislation requires that an appeals process must be set up when parents object to textbooks or learning materials. How do you prevent the objectionable material from being taught during the appeals process?
Okay, there's 2 parts to why this law was put into place. To look at things that might be socially objectionable or not congruent with people's social standards. But there's also the concept of errors that might be in the system. In fact, one of the things that we do find is that there are frequently incorrect things in the curriculum. Even the testing may have incorrect things in there. So there's the opportunity, and I think that this is a good process that allows people to have some right of redress of grievance about what they're paying for through the public. What we can do on a local school level is if in fact the information is highly objectionable or it's inaccurate, and so we can address that in terms of what we are going to teach and what we're not going to teach. An example of that has come up recently in Atlantic Beach, where there was some material and one of the commissioners there, Jimmy Hill, protested that. It got national attention, and that was removed. So those things not only are existing in the current law and in the changes that we're going to see as a result of that legislation, that's something that's been in the system in the past. Now it's been formalized. We'll deal with it much in the same way as we've dealt with it before.
Thank you. Do you have any closing remarks?
Yes, I do. I want to thank you again for inviting me here to participate in your conversation. I'm a big believer that our school system needs to be empowered with the right leadership. You know, if you look at our model, we're the 22nd largest school system in the United States. And it's not like the NFL draft, where if you're in last place, you get first pick. Since we're one of the biggest and most influential and powerful, we should be going after the best leadership on a national level. And that's the key. If you look at what we can do in terms of student performance, it has a lot to do, and this is proven out in our system by putting the right principles and the right leadership in schools. You see those scores come up. So we can do things now to attain better performance. Overall, this is very much an economic issue. If you look at education and the level of education that people have in a community, you typically see a higher level of affluence. You see more businesses moving to those communities, and you see more prosperity. So what's good for Jacksonville are good students, good teachers, good educators, and the right skill set, training for vocational school, training and readiness for college, because 9 out of 10 jobs today, they require more than just a high school degree. So that's what I'm all about. I'd love to see us do better, and I think we can do better. Thank you very much.